Hello and welcome to another edition of the Transfer Show here on Anfield Index, the YouTube channel, if you don't mind. I am joined, of course, by Mr. Dave Davis to discuss the latest stories. Hey, Dave.
Just everything. It feels like at the moment, Trev, I'm all good from Monday and still buzzing off that. Also, Sunday into Monday and everything else that is associated with that. A couple of journalists said, and this is true, it's no coincidence how Edwards, Hughes, Henry, Gordon, they're all in town and info and stories are coming out galore and things are accelerating, which is maybe a case of not everything out there will be true, but we're just here to talk about everything that's out there, really, aren't we? So, yeah, we will see. But exciting, mate. Exciting all round.
Not just Johnny Henry, but Linda's in town as well. Stories linking Linda to Trent and having an influence with side-eye emojis. That's where we're at with this level of nonsense. But we will try to keep it in the realms of actual info that we've gotten without interpreting too much from the rest of stuff. Dave, you have a packed agenda for us, buddy. We best just get into it. And the first thing is, let's talk about the Trent contract, because we've just mentioned it, just brought it up. I want to do it quickly because there's no real news, but there are some different factors feeding into it. First one is we all saw the kid in the wake of Sunday's win. He looked like a kid in a candy store, very happy, very amongst his pals, very much part of everything. No suggestion that he's on the outside looking in. Now, you can read too much into that, Dave. It could be just a lad having a good time with his mates, safe that he's off on his next adventure. Or it could be a lad who has decided to free himself from the angst of worry about going elsewhere and what will it mean for his legacy, and he's all in. It depends on your interpretation. And I saw no evidence one way or the other to commit to one side or the other, and no evidence to change my mind that Trent is a very self-contained young man these days who will do what Trent wants to do. So what have we got by way of the new rumors around his contract?
Yeah, I can't believe that it does actually feel like a transfer show that we're bringing things like lip reading and the owner's wife into the mix as credible things, actually. Now you say it even just now. But yeah, there was a lip reader hired by the Daily Mail to give us commentary on what was said between John W. Henry and Trent and people making sense of that. There was then, as it shows on the screen there, that Trent photo and Linda put the eyes on it and people went, well, she knows something that way. Then there was the third element on the day where the Cody Gakpo interview where we did the we're going to build on next summer. We've got Virgil, we've got Mo and maybe Trent. So everyone was like, hold on, the squad don't seem to know he's going and all that. So everyone was, well, not everyone, that's too far, but many were jumping onto that. But we just have to be honest about this. You don't want to engineer false hope. Every journal, everyone is on the same page now. No one has news that he's in negotiation still with Liverpool. They think no one has that at all, just to be clear. All that's happening is all your journos and people are going, we still expect him to go to Real Madrid, but just that little get out of jail free line along the lines of, but you never know. And Sunday, you saw how he's injured. But just to be crystal clear, there is nothing from anyone right now that indicates Trent is staying at Anfield.
So just for those who are of an optimistic bent, can we just tease out the one thing that is of any significance there? Side eyes emojis mean nothing to me. But what does mean something to me is a prominent member of the squad saying that he's not certain one way or the other. The maybe that's coming from Gakpo there. You say that in a very deliberate way. You don't mention the kid if he's not going to stay. You don't mention him if he definitely is going to stay. You say it in a more definitive way. So that to me means that there possibly is a chance that he's going to hang about. Maybe I'm fishing, Dave. What did you make of the Cody comment in terms of I can't see any purpose in saying maybe otherwise?
Yeah, It's a weird one, and you get split opinion on this. And I fully understand that argument logic that he doesn't know and he's saying, and people say, oh, he's maybe just from the squad perspective trying to put a little bit of pressure in a good way on Trent, like we love you, we want you to stay. And I totally get that argument. I also understand it from the other side of people saying it's also probably just the squad protecting Trent a little bit at the moment. And I can understand that argument of like, well, if he says anything around the other way, he's isolating Trent differently from the other two. You also, as people mentioned, whatever we think of fans, and we've talked about this to death about our opinion on this, but you saw on Sunday, look at the squad. Trent was involved. Trent was at the forefront. Trent was being pushed in front of the cop. He is still, the way they see it, whatever happens, fully one of them, part of the leadership group. So it's always just important to remember the players are never going to see it how the fans see it by nature. It's it's different for them. So I don't know, and I can't prove it either way. But if you ask me for my gut, I just wonder if it's a little bit of Cody Gakpo gets on well with Trent and he's maybe just protecting his mate in the way he delivers that.
That's a lovely bit of balance to my needless optimism, which I didn't even believe as I was putting it out there. But I'm glad that you gave that perspective, because it allows people now to, think about whatever way they want to think about it. By the way, if you're watching this show and you've been linked in by the Anthony Gordon message in the title, we will get there, but it will be the last of the Liverpool stories, just for the record. If you're sitting there chomping at the bit, desperate to say your piece in the comments about Anthony Gordon, hang tough, dudes. We will get there. The next story we want to look at is Ibu Konate and Curtis Jones and Connor Bradley, because we know that there are contract issues around all of those, and we heard various things about the latter two. The Curtis one was, the people were saying that he was a bit disgruntled. The Connor Bradley one, there was great positivity about it recently, which spoke to a breakthrough. And then the Ibu Konate one, we know where that is. We've been given even numbers, whether they're real or not, but apparently they're approximately real. And so, like you said before, this will be the contract perhaps where the money men go up on that hill to die or to continue the fight. So what's the latest on the three of those boys and their contract scenarios?
Yeah, Liverpool they're still trying for all three. When I say still trying, it's not the phrase of we're in the last gasp saloon by any, regards. There's a year left to go on Konate. There's 2 years left to go on the two homegrown players as well. But yeah, I mean, Ibu came out after the game, didn't he, and said, it's between me and the club. It's very much cloak and dagger, that whole situation, isn't it? And it's quite clear the club wants to renew him, as we said before, on certain terms that maybe Ibu and his agent aren't going to fully agree to right now. So we'll see if there's any compromise on there, that something's going to happen. All the suggestions are this summer, one way or the other. But Liverpool are trying to get that done. And the same with Connor Bradley and Curtis Jones. Just the only real update we had on that is still talking to those two, but both of those players understand there's not the necessary urgency right now with those two because of time. And also there's a big Trent-shaped question and an Ibu-shaped question to deal with at the same time. So they understand that it's probably not going to be a quick one for them. And there's maybe just a few priorities to sort one way or the other.
It's interesting too that both Bradley and Ibu's contracts are going to be very, very, very affected by what we do by ways of recruitment as well. Because you imagine if we go out and buy a Trent replacement who's going to be locked in as first choice, that might change things with the Bradley negotiations. And if we go and push forward with the Huijsen thing, which we'll get to now, then obviously that's going to have a knock-on effect for Ibu as well. These are all the interconnection at this point of the season with the moves, and we always say that in this show, is so complex. And it's not only within the club; it's what happens at other clubs, and what happens with agents, and what happens with family, and what happens with opinionated dads. Lots and lots of factors there. In terms of our next story, though, we should have a look at some striker stories, and we'll start with Diogo Jota. And I want you to clarify something first, because a lot of people are talking about Diogo Jota, and I have used the phrase before about Diogo Jota as saleable asset. And by that, I mean, I love Jota. And when he's playing and he's in form, he's fantastic. He's a real asset. And, you know, he's part of a Premier League winning side. What I would say about him is there is the injury issue. And with this, at this point of his contract, I would imagine it's the most he's ever going to be able to accrue for Liverpool. Where is he with the contract? Because there are a couple of lads, I think Diaz is in the same boat, whose contracts are not in that dodgy, precarious situation. But were we to run on to this time next year, you'd be looking at them being much shorter, and therefore Liverpool expecting to get much less for those assets, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've said it before, and because obviously we speculate, we just talk about what we think. And from all the news we were getting, you kind of had the feeling that for all the other movement elsewhere, Jota would maybe just run it down. Yes, he wants a new contract, but why would the club be wanting to give Diogo Jota a new contract? Let's just be, brass tacks. Look at his form, look at his age, look at his injury record. Why would you give Diogo Jota right now a wage increase or a new contract? It just wouldn't make any logical sense, would it? So there's that in the mix. So we all kind of went, oh, well, we'll probably just run it down and we'll see what happens. There might be a bit of interest. There's a few bits cut. Like, honestly, Chris Bascom wrote about it, didn't he? Saying there's Saudi interest in Diogo Jota. No one can seem to get if Diogo Jota's got any interest in this at all. But Chris Bascom, and, he's been mentioned there. And, yeah, digging around, there does seem to be Saudi interest. But the other important thing to say is, because naturally when these things come out, as we do, you start digging around, you start asking, see what you can get. Where's this? Premier League clubs are interested in Diogo Jota. Premier League clubs, Trev. And we're talking like ones that, everyone will be thinking, yeah, you could probably draw that logical thing, like Newcastle, Wolves and others are definitely interested in Diogo Jota. The big thing that everyone's saying around this, and this is probably, I still struggle to kind of put something on this at the moment. How much is Diogo Jota worth right now? People will have a big, I think, variance on that in terms of people will look at his scoring record, but then people will look at his injury history, and people will look at his pedigree, but then people will look at where he is right now at the same time. And I mean, I've got to be honest, we watch him all the time, so you can make a good assessment. He looks miles off it right now. And there's nothing more telling that Arne Slot is prepared to play now, quite clearly. Luis Diaz is kind of a false nine or an alternating forward, as it's been described, rather than have Diogo Jota start, which tells you everything to know about Liverpool wanting to give him a new contract. Now, I don't know if I'm manifesting this because he's given us some great minutes and some, great history. He's been such a key part in recent years. There's zero doubt about that. But I'm just wondering, like, at what level, and I'm speculating here completely. I know there's interest. We said that's, but I don't know anything about price, and that's a lie. But if someone puts 40 million quid on the table for Diogo Jota, I think it gives them a real decision to make in terms of, like you said, this is the only time you can really cash in on him. His injuries and all that. He just screams to me, and to use your phrase, saleable asset, that if you're going to do it, now seems the time. And I just don't know how that's going to go, but I think it might come down to money and how much someone's prepared to pay.
We signed him for a reported 41 million, unless my memory's gone askew. And Diogo turned 28 a couple of months ago. I think it was November, December time. So he is now sort of 28 years of age, signed for 41 million with what he has given the club in terms of service. And it has been, like you said rightly, some really important moments over the years. If you were to get that same amount of money back for that lad at this age with his injury track record, I think you count that as a massive win, factoring in what he's done for the club in the time that he was here. Yeah. And I think anything above that, which might be, Saudi Arabian funded pounds, which you're looking at maybe going up to 50, well, that's just gloriously wonderful bonus. But the point will be, Diogo Jota now has a long career so far of playing in the Premier League. Do you think Diogo Jota is going to want to take the semi-retirement option that is Saudi Arabia? I don't think so.
No.
I even heard a link, a club that you didn't mention, that Arsenal might even be interested. That could be horse shit because we just know Arsenal are looking for strikers. But the last thing they need is another sick note as well. So who knows? I have no idea. It's a very interesting one. He is one of the three big potential earners for the club. It's just so happens that they all happen to be across the front line. And do you see a world in which the club does that? But let's push on with the stories because eventually we'll get to all of them. Just in terms of a couple of lads who are having a little contrasting bit of fate in terms of coming and going. Ben Doak and young Rio. You have, during the week, you told me a really interesting take on Rio in terms of his future at the club. And Ben Doak just seems to be sitting there in the Anfield window with a price tag on his ear, as far as I can see. So talk to us about anything further on those two.
Yeah, it literally couldn't be more opposite for the two. The info we're getting that Ben Doak, bar the shouting Anfield career, which hasn't really got started, is pretty much done. That it's seen as a good player, talented, can easily be a Premier League player. We knew last summer, and even in Jan, they were turning down bids, weren't they, from Ipswich Palace and the like. Bournemouth have got interested. Liverpool will just be about can they get the amount they want? So it's fully expected that Ben Doak moves on. And part of that is we've already got a number of senior forwards, but young Rio has kind of killed any chance for him. This is maybe, in the weirdest way, it's not a senior player, but it's maybe my most exciting story I've had this week, which I know I've sent you the screenshots and different bits. They really rate this kid. Now, people are going to be saying, oh, yeah, well, of course he's in it. No, listen to what I'm saying, people. They really rate this kid. Arne Slot really rates this kid to the point where it was even looked in the start of this year, do we promote him to the full senior lineup and think about minutes that way? But obviously, you look at Chiesa, he's getting, 5 minutes a game tops, isn't he? So, that decision was made against. But they really like this kid to the extent Liverpool are seriously prepared to look next season at going 5 senior forwards and Rio. They really rate this kid. They do not want to block his pathway to the first team, which I'm intrigued by this because we know Arne Slot, for all his brilliance, if the youngster's not there, like Bajcetic, Clark, bye, out my way, I need to train the senior player. So the fact that info's coming that Arne Slot really rates this kid, don't underestimate that because Arne Slot's not rating the kid unless he's got an idea of the pathway and different bits. So, yeah, probably my in a weird way, most exciting news of everything. Don't be surprised when Rio Ngamoa's around the senior squad fully next year.
Watch how I've spun this in my head, Dave. You're going to love this. So 5 senior forwards plus Rio, to me, means that we move out 3 lads and get in 3 new lads. That's my big excited head for the day. We'll see how that goes. I'm not sure if there's any realistic possibility to that. Let's move before we go back to strikers and talk about young Huijsen, who is very much the flavour of the month. And we had some Ornstein input about him, about Kirkes. We had Chris Bascom weighing in as well. He seems to have been causing a little bit of a furore with his article as well. Talk to us about the latest on these two.
It almost felt like last week, just the way of the traffic that you felt like we are pushing for Huijsen, Kirkes. There felt almost a sense that this could really, and now it's just like I say, a week is such a long time in football. So for those that missed it, there's obviously 2 camps within the Huijsen camp. There's the advisor who's linked to Chelsea, and their owners and pushing for that. There's the dad who sees it, good project, Virgil learning all that type of thing. So there's that element. We balanced all that last week. The big thing really got sort of in the last few days on this, and I was sending you screenshots of this as well. Liverpool are pushing to get Ibu renewed. As seems to be, the info that coming out from a few parts, if Ibu gets renewed, what message does that send to Dean Huijsen about signing for Liverpool? Because they've just renewed Van Dijk. They'll have just renewed Konate. Now, everyone knows it's always Van Dijk and one other, of course, but they're not renewing Konate on the basis that, listen, Ibu lad, you're probably going to do a job share with young Dino here. So you just when those, you've got to keep that in mind.
Plus, Dave, we're not going to renew Ibu if there's any fear that his potential signal tendencies will continue or worsen. So the only way, if they are signing on the dotted line and giving him the money, nobody's got a chance of breaking those two up until either Virgil or Ibu breaks.
Yeah, it almost feels like, as you said, the way that links, it feels like dominoes now, doesn't it? That Huijsen, that the Konate one has to almost disappear for Huijsen to get knocked down and to really pursue that way. So that's a big thing to keep an eye on. And also Kirkaz, which, we've even talked about it, isn't it? It feels like, or it felt like an Alexis McAllister one, but it's just interesting. And no one really knows if this is a bit of a tactic, but Bournemouth were clearly leaking all the stories about, there's interest from Real and there's interest from Madrid and there's interest from everywhere that way. Because, of course, that you want to play your game that way. Whether it's us returning serve and our stories are through Chris Bascom, etc., going, well, the price for Kirkaz is just making us think, and there's others like Nori's names all of a sudden come into the mix. This is one where you just don't know if they're playing a game or there's truth in it. Yeah, there's a reason all the big FSG, all the suits, they're in town at the moment. Stories are flying around galore, aren't they? So some of them will be stories that are given to journalists to be clear people, that the journalists are reporting in good faith. They're getting info and, analysts in good faith. But the club are quite happy for them to be out there, aren't they, for that reason? So I just don't know with this Kirkaz one whether it's true or not. Just to be clear, though, the info is out there that Liverpool are, the valuation, Chris Bascom reported it, it's clearly out there, no doubts at all. And other names are coming in the mix, like Nori again. But I don't know, again, I would not tell you honestly right now that's 100% real. There's a bit of me just with everything that's going on, just wondering, is this a negotiation tactic to try and get the price down a little? But do you know what? It's exciting either way. There's drama across the board with these moves, isn't there?
Yeah, again, really important to point out that clubs use the media to leverage situations in their favor. Really important to point out that most journalists repeat the information they hear in good faith.
Yeah.
As opposed to, they're all out there lying. Really important to point out that sometimes they are out there lying.
Yeah,
so
sure.
we as a transfer show are caught in the middle. We tell you what we've heard. We talk about the great angles that you get, and that's all we can do. Nobody's ever saying anything's 100% around these parts, because that would just be daft. Let's finish by talking about two more attackers. And I know we said we finished with the Gordon one, so we'll do that. That means we have to go to Darwin Nunez next. And there was a Darwin Nunez link, not to Saudi, but to Spain. And this has me very giddy for obvious reasons, which we'll talk about in a second.
This one has got me preparing my favorite gif of the baby just praying and
You love that gif.
Ready for this one. I'm all in on this for manifestation, people. And it's only half a manifestation, because obviously we talked about Darwin Saudi. That's out there. There's no secret of that at all. But various stories from Spain about Atletico Madrid and their interest. Digging around this, 100%. Atletico Madrid really like Darwin. Absolutely. Difference is, and we kind of alluded to it the other week, you'll probably get about, and again, it's not exact, but from the stories, 60 million or so, won't you? Maybe even more. They rejected more in Saudi, but that was January, so you're not quite sure. Whereas the reports have Atletico value Darwin around sort of 35 to 40 million. So there's a distinct difference there. There's no two ways about it. However, Liverpool do like Julián Alvarez. We adore Julián Alvarez. If you think of how much we don't want Xavi Simons, think the opposite end of the scale for how much we do want Julián Alvarez. I mean, I still think
we being me and you as opposed to the club.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, this is the player that if we could just pick one now, done, get it signed, bang, the summer's sorted, we're off, everything else will sort itself. This would be that. So Liverpool do like that. And Atletico Madrid are quite well known for spending a bit, needing to sell a bit, doing some clever accounting, shall we say, as they've done historically as well. So as you know, stories from Spain and different places come that into the mix. This might be 2-2 and getting 27. I don't care though if we're doing multiplication wrong, subtraction, addition, whatever. We are all in on the possibility of this. So until this kind of dies on the vine and Darwin does end up in Saudi or something breaks, I've got proper hope for this one, and I'm praying.
And can we just explore the possibility that this number of 35, which, you know, feels like Liverpool eating a big slice of humble pie and admitting defeat, who cares, A?
No.
But B, that could be very much an opportunity for some creative accounting in terms of, well, give us an orange and an old episode of Cheers on video cassette and Darwin Nunez, and we'll give you Julián Alvarez. Like, I mean, what I'm saying is the price for Julián Alvarez may well be influenced by how little they pay for Darwin. I can't see the attraction that they'd have for Darwin, but God bless them if it's true. And like you said, I'm manifesting it. I'm Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon. Will it to me, Riggs. Will it to me. I can't tell you how much I want that to happen, but we'll see. And let's finish with the story that's going to cause all the lads in the chat to lose their heads. The Anthony Gordon story. What is the crack here? Oh, actually, before that, do you want it? Was there a little bit of... Yeah, no, let's just go straight to that. Let's just go straight to that because Diaz is connected, right?
It all ties together. It's just attackers, basically tonight, which is the sexy positions that we like at the same time as well. Yeah, people probably see it on the screen. The tweet from good old Pipe Sierra around Luis Diaz. And it's weird, isn't it, with Diaz a little bit, because there's almost been a sense of inevitability that he's going a bit like Nunez. And, you know, we were just waiting for this to develop. We know he's had the Saudi interest, as has been well reported. Contract, we're all expecting it. But it just feels like in the last, I don't want to say few weeks, maybe it's just because of his form, recency bias, who knows. But like has been tweeted and people have been suggesting, would Liverpool actually renew Luis Diaz, even with the option of, you know, you keep him for a year and do that because of all the other things left to do in the forward line. He can do well. He's brilliant at left wing. You know, he's can play the false nine, if you want to call it that. So, yeah, there's a bit of a weird one with this. We're going to almost have to wait to see, in domino sense, what happens with the Diaz contract, because that feels like it starts again, the Nunez, everything on, like what's going to happen. So this is really fascinating to watch. And it's fascinating to watch because we've got to jump to Tyneside and Newcastle. All the bits I've sent you today, which we're still trying to like process and different bits, it's just so bizarre. All the info we're getting still in terms of, yes, just get it out of your system now. It might not be realistic. They might get Champions League. Just get all that out of your system right now. All the info we're still getting, even today, as you know, Trev, from the screenshots I sent you, the most reliable stuff, Alexander Isak is still Liverpool's top target for that number 9 position. And before you start, we're like, the injury record, Newcastle probably get a chat. There's a million reasons, there's 120 million reasons why this probably won't come off. You suspect that. But the noises coming around are still that Liverpool are trying to get Alexander-Isak, which you kind of thought they'd have just given it up a little bit by now, wouldn't you? But, you know, the fact that this is still coming out is bizarre. And then Diaz. Where does Diaz play? Centre forward, but predominantly left wing. This is just strange because we all remember last summer, don't we? And the whole Newcastle PSR and the Joe Gomez, Anthony Gordon, then he signed the renewal. So we were like, that's the one, move on type of thing. We'll see how the season goes. As the headline is there, people, it's come in the last few hours. And as Trev will tell you, and I'm telling you now, we've had this stood up and verified as well by very good people that we get good info from. Liverpool are still looking at Anthony Gordon as a possible target, dependent on what happens. Don't just dismiss Anthony Gordon. This is not us saying, before anyone goes mental and doesn't listen like sometimes happens in the chat panel, we're going to raid Newcastle for Gordon. That is not what we're saying at all. All we're saying is the info is Isak is still Liverpool's top number 9 target, and they want a number 9. And Anthony Gordon, if Liverpool do make a move for a left winger, is right there near the top of the list. So I don't know how I feel about this one, because it's not Javi Simmons, boo. It's not Julian Alvarez, hooray. It's just kind of like a Larry David type of thing, isn't it, really? I don't know, but yeah, there's all your info, Trev.
Well, it's, again, sometimes I despair. People saying we're not going to sell cheap. We never said we're going to sell cheap. We said there might be some creative accounting. People saying, why would you possibly sign Darwin Nunez and replace him for Alvarez? Again, we just said that. But when it comes to the Tony Gordon stuff, I'm really interested in this. And I'm really interested in this for several reasons. I think an awful lot of people have very polarized opinion of him because when he was at Everton, he was easy to dislike. Yeah. And a lot of people imprint in one way and they're incapable of ever changing their minds, and they don't even see anything outside of that little tunnel vision. He's a bad lad. I don't like him. He's gone to Newcastle. He's made a success of it. I think I was just having a look at his stats. So far in the Premier League season so far, he's got 6 goals, 5 assists in 30 games. He is absolutely can be rapid. He has a lot of skill. Yeah. He's a talented lad. He is, we know, a boyhood red, an actual one, as opposed to one of these putative ones. So, I mean, there could be an awful lot that could work there, and I would never rule out any player coming to Liverpool on the basis of just some little small idea you had of him in the past. From what I've seen of him, there's a footballer there. Is he better than Luis Diaz? I don't think that could be argued at the moment. But if Luis Diaz wants out and the club want to sell, then we have to replace someone on that side, theoretically. The one thing I will say to you about all of this is I heard a debate today, Dave, and this is bringing it back around to the Isak thing, because people will be hearing the Isak thing rolling their eyes into the back of their heads like we were doing when we heard it today. Yeah, exactly. Safe in the knowledge that this guy is going to cost too much for us, surely, for the love of God. We all know how we operate. But there was a debate going on amongst several different pundits talking about, can you imagine if Liverpool had a high-scoring number 9?
Yeah.
I mean, factor that in on the back of what Mo Salah is doing and other creative attacker that we sign. Whew. I mean, it starts, and Cody Gakpo doing bits and lads from midfield doing bits. I mean, there's no reason why we don't take a big step up next year on the back of a goal-scoring number 9. So you can see why this is an absolute priority, and you can see why Isak, because he's so quality, is a story that won't go away until it goes away. But I think everybody's going to be unsurprised that we're cynical about that one as well. That, I think, is us on the Liverpool stuff. So let's move it sideways to our colleagues around the Premier League and start with...
One more.
Go on. What have we got?
I've not even told you about this.
Oh, I love a surprise.
But yeah, we talked about the gaslighting and throwing the petrol on the bonfire about a big summer and all this. So for those that have probably seen it, we've done a number of pods today. So we had Lewis Steele on, Paul Joyce will be out later and all this. And, David Ornstein's been mentioned. Big summer keeps getting said, doesn't it? And like Liverpool have got, big money to spend and all this type of thing. And I even just chatting to Lewis, he's a brilliant lad. For anyone who's seen it or watched the pod already, I said I nearly thought about, just apart from the meltdown, I could have put War Chest, but the editor pulled it out. So they get it from the other side as well. But was quite clear. David Ornstein said that, and I know, look at that. Before I've even finished my sentence, people are putting, we heard this last year, we heard it, like, it's all nonsense. Like, let me get the sentence out before you slag it off. Like,
hold.
Yeah, just hold the fume a little bit for a second. So there's that in the mix. But Lewis Steele and a few others have been unequivocally clear. Their information is that Liverpool have, there is real money there to spend, and Liverpool are looking at it. The second thing that a lot of journos are really focusing on and have taken, and the club briefing is the same. Arne Slot has said repeatedly in games about there's games where we should have finished teams off 4 or 5-0, but we just don't clinical. We're not like a Manchester City who can score all those chances. He's repeated that a number of times. And he even reiterated it again when he was asked about how do you keep this going, and said, the standards are the same. They don't drop, but we'll look at things. And that got mentioned and it wasn't a link to a transfer, but just on the pod with Paul Joyce when we were talking about next season, that keeps coming up about the need to add those goals to the team more than anything. Despite the fact, we're top scorers. So jump on that in a second. Your fume can come in a minute. Just listen for 1 sec. So the names that are still coming out, as that are still there. Liverpool, as many journalists will tell you and are out there and are saying it, Liverpool are clearly looking for centre forward as a priority position. Liverpool know they want a proper number 9. That's why you're hearing names like Isak, who again, our info is he's the top priority, the top target. You can all fume about whether you think that's real. That's why Alvarez is being mentioned. Osman, Sesko in the mix. Ekitike, probably price rules him out. But Liverpool are looking for a proper number 9 at the moment. And if you want a proper number 9, they are not cheap. Now, the pièce de resistance I've saved from the bits I've got today as well, Trev. Liverpool want a proper number 9. They know they cost money, but it's not like they'll go down. Liverpool are not a club that goes, it's not guess who is it? We can't get Isaacs. We won't go out, like ding, 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 ding. We won't go to option number 12. That is not how Liverpool work. If Liverpool can't get the caliber and the quality of number 9 they want, Liverpool are looking at alternatives. What we mean by that is there's players that can play wide forward, but could also alternate as the 9, like Mo Salah could as well. So don't be surprised if you cannot get those top targets if we move on to the alternate plan as well.
You're not going to throw out alternate plan without a name or two for us, are you? You are, aren't you?
No. To be fair, part of and I still like, this is why I'm struggling even more now with the name. Gordon was mentioned in the mix for that, and I'm like, Anthony Gordon at number 9, but has played like as almost a false 9 for Newcastle, could be an option there. The other name that was really mentioned, and again, I don't know if I kind of like it, but I don't. And Mbeumo.
Yeah, and that's one that's been around for a while.
Yeah, but again, people, because I can see, look at the fume started already, hasn't it, about are you rating? This is just the info we've got. Just to be clear again, if we could do anything, we'd sell kidneys to get Julián Alvarez to Liverpool. We think that would be the game changer. But just telling you the info that we've got over the last few days. And there you go.
And before we move on to the rest of the Premier League and then Europe, just a little bit of how the sausage is made here. When Dave supplied me with the info that he gets, and we talk about it before the show, and he was saying, the talk is there's a lot of money. you know, the proverbial war chest, that old chestnut. What did we both say? What did we both say to each other? Let the gaslighting commence. That's what we both said. So we're just the same as you watching and listening to this. We have the same degree of cynicism, and yet, you know, it's our job just to tell you what we're hearing. You go and make of it what you will, but again, stop shooting the messenger, please.